So, several of my last few videos have touched on the Ahmaud Arbery controversy. And if you've watched those videos, which are it's parts 1 and 2 called Jogging While Black, you will know that I am 100% on the side of Ahmaud Arbery. He was the victim of a lynching and a hate crime. And so, as I've been thinking about that and thinking about the very heightened state of racial tension in which we live, I want to talk about some of the problems with this that I see. Some of the, I hate the word systemic, but some of the culturally ingrained, if you will, problems around the current state of racial tension and race relations. And I always try with all of these, I want to make it clear that, I try to step back and take a larger perspective on things. So sometimes it may sound like I am punching down on the people who are trying to help or who think they are helping. But as in this case, what I want to talk about today, this is because you're doing it the wrong way. You're doing something that's making things actively worse. And, C.S. Lewis said that we all want progress, but if you've gone down the wrong road, progress means turning around and going back to the right road, in which case the man who turns around first is the most progressive. So, apparently being the most progressive, I want to talk about a problem. There are these terms that get tossed around: white privilege, white guilt, white fragility, and they all denote certain behaviors in white people that are supposedly worsening the state of race relations with, especially in terms of how whites relate to blacks in the United States. So I want to advance my own term, and this has been brewing for a while, but I want to advance my own term, and that is white masochism. And I would define white masochism as the inability to see a middle ground or the inability to see a neutral counter stance to white pride. So there are people who think that if they are not constantly flagellating themselves for being white, then they are then that puts them in a position. Then they are by default being guilty of white pride. It feels weird to say they're being white proud, but I guess that would be grammatically correct. That they don't understand that it's possible to be neutral on the subject of how you feel about your race. Now, what comes up inevitably from white liberals especially is this thing about, the only reason you can feel neutral about your race is because you're white, and therefore, yada, 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 you have the option of blah, 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 blah. Wait a minute. Every single person on this earth has the option of deciding how they will feel about themselves. Every person has that option. Every black person, every Asian person, every Hispanic person, every white person, every neon green with purple polka dots person, well, maybe not them, we all know they're a bunch of fucking assholes, but anyway, every person has the opportunity to decide for themselves how they feel about themselves, irrespective of what society is telling you, irrespective of what the world is telling you, that you have the right to decide for yourself how you feel about yourself. You have that right. That is inalienable, and nobody can take it away from you. No amount of torture can take it away from you. No amount of oppression can take it away from you. At the very most, somebody could torture you into changing how you speak about yourself publicly. But they cannot change how you actually internally feel about yourself. That remains forever your inalienable right. And even if somebody breaks you down, beats you down into the ground to the point that you mentally change how you feel about yourself, you still have fundamentally decided to give in to that. We all have the right to decide how we feel. about ourselves. And so we all have the right to decide to be neutral about our race, neither proud of it nor guilty about it. And that's very important, because white guilt, any kind of racial guilt, in my opinion, is just as bad and just as toxic as any kind of racial pride. It's the same, it works off the same axiom. The only way to escape it is not to play. The only way to not have the fight, or not, the only way to win the war is not to fight it, sorry. And I'm going to give you an example from my own life of what I'm talking about. 20 years ago, actually 17, 18 years ago, I started in 2002, and I suck at math. Anyway, 2002, fall of 2002, I started at the Berklee College of Music. I was a freshman. That's Berkeley in Boston, by the way, not California. The first, week or so of classes, they had the different student unions and student clubs had their big presentation gala, their big showroom thing where you could go around to the different booths and sign up for all of the different student extracurricular activities. A couple of guys that lived next door to me in the dorms, where I was sitting in the common area on our floor, and they came up, and these two white guys, they came up laughing, came in laughing because they had tried to go up and sign up for the black student union. They did, as white guys, they decided to sign up for the black student union, and they went up to the table and said, "Hey, we'd like to sign up, and even though we're white, we'd like to sign up. Can we do that?" And they said, "Oh, sure, yeah, anybody can sign up. It's open to anybody." And they took they took the sign. They had the sign up sheet on the clipboard sitting on the table. And they took it off and said, "Here, sign up on this." And they put a different sign up sheet on the table, and they filled that out and said, "Okay, we'll be in touch," and put it back under the table and put the actual sign up sheet back up. And it was obvious it's obvious why they were doing that. They had a separate sign up sheet ready in case some asshole came up and tried to sign up that way. Now, I am morally, I am officially neutral on the idea of race-based unions at colleges. I don't think that they are necessary. If you want to have a group that is exclusively one race, put it together yourself. Don't bring the school into that. So that's my position. And anyway, I mean, I certainly don't have any. That said, I don't have any desire or need to antagonize the black student union. If they want to do it, it's fine. It's not a big problem to me. And so these guys were laughing about it. We thought it was funny, just that they were so ready for someone to come sign up, make a bullshit attempt to sign up like that. And so a couple of days later, I'm sitting in the cafeteria talking to one of my friends, and we're just having we're having a laugh about this because I thought it was funny that they were that they did this played out this way. Well, there's this guy, and he went by, I'm not going to say his full name. He went by Mel. And Mel, I had not spoken to Mel before that I'm aware of. I had not had any dealings with Mel. But Mel was sitting a couple of seats down at the same table in the cafeteria. Black guy. Very large, imposing physical figure. And that will come up in a moment, as you will see, or be relevant in a moment. But Mel overheard me telling this to a friend. I wasn't talking to him. I was telling it to a friend, and he overhears this, and he interjected, and he said, "What did they do?" And I just, "Oh, well, they did this, that, and the other," and he just had to look at me. They had this horrible stank look on his face, glaring at me the whole time, and then for 4 years, Mel harbored this grudge against me, where, every time he would see me, there would be some kind of little, fuck you to me that was clearly racially based. Like one time, one year we were in the same dormitory, and I happened to be walking down the hall of, the dorms with my shirt off. And, I have very, very pale, literally white skin. And so he looks at me and goes, "Oh, where are my sunglasses at? Where are my sunglasses at?" You know, that kind of thing, like very clearly racially based insults like that. And I didn't give it a lot of attention. Uh, the I didn't give it a lot of attention at the time because, you know, Sun Tzu, he will win, who knows when not to fight, so it just didn't seem like a big issue to me. And then one day, I believe I was in my third year at Berkeley, I was entering 150 Mass Ave, which 150 Mass Ave is kind of the main Berkeley building, and I was going into Mass Ave, and yes, I was. I was going into Mass Ave, and I walk up to the door, and the front door, and Mel is coming towards me out the door. So I take the door, by the handle, I open it and step to the side to hold the door for him to walk out. And he spat on me. He turned and spat on me. And when I say he spat on me, I mean we're not. He spat on me from this far away. He was this close to me, you know. Close enough to lean out and kiss me if he wanted to. I mean, like right there. We're not. I'm not talking about, you know, he accidentally spat it. You know, he spat into the wind accidentally and it came back and hit me. I'm like, no, he turned right there. Somebody this close to you comes and goes right there and spat on me, leaned and spat on me, on my chest, and walked off. Okay, first of all, legally speaking, that's assault, and given the context, it's also a hate crime. At the time, I went into the lobby, down, you go into Mass Ave, you go straight down the stairs, there's a restroom down the hall to the right. I just went to that restroom, washed it off, and went on. And I thought about it. I thought about reporting it, and I thought about having this conflict, and at the time, I remember this was my thought process at the time. I thought, you know what? Because I was so white liberal at that point, you know, I literally thought to myself, you know what, man? Mel has had to deal with so much shit being black. He's black, man. He has to deal with all of these societal injustices, and he has to think, and he lives with the history of slavery and Jim Crow and segregation and redlining and the war on drugs and this, that, and the other, and racial profiling and all of this stuff. No wonder he's mad at white people, man. No wonder that he would do. You know, you have to understand, man. That was my mindset at the time, and I pretty much avoided Mel altogether at that point after that. If by some chance, I've actually, however, since then, since kind of maturing in my worldview and my politics and everything, that's one thing that I've thought about. And it's like, seriously, I can't find him on social media. I know his full name. I can't find him on social media. I can't find him on the internet anywhere. I would like to find him and get in touch with him and be like, hey man, that was fucked up. What the fuck is your problem? You know, what the fuck, man? I would love to resolve that issue with him. I'm tempted. When I sat down and made this video, I was strongly tempted to say his full name to try to signal blast it out there. Maybe somebody can find him. You know, that said, there have got to have been, you know, how many countless numbers of people named Mel who have gone to Berkeley in its many years of existence. So I feel like I can say that much. Just use that much of the name, and that was, I think, just a nickname too. Obviously, Mel was short for something. Anyway, the point being, what I was doing right there, that justification process that I went through, what was I really scared of? Well, I was scared of, I mean, I'm 6'2" and fairly muscular, but even so, I was scared of getting in a physical altercation with somebody his size, getting in a physical altercation with a black person, knowing that there would be political ramifications to that. Having any kind of conflict with a black person, because I was still in that bubble, that mindset, that white liberal bubble of the bad guys are all white. You know, George Bush was in the White House, and I was passionately opposed to George Bush. I still am. And although I think he's would be infinitely better than what we have now. Um, but I was of that mindset that it's like, okay, the only bad people, the only bad guys, the only bad actors are white, and it's like every black person who does something bad is coming off of this history of racism and oppression. Okay, there is absolutely no history of racism and oppression that justifies what Mel did. He did not have the right to come spit on me. And like I said, there's no question that he knew what he was doing. I mean, he looked right at me. And hawked a loogie from about this far away. And there's no question he knew what he was doing. And no question that he knew that he did it. And there is no justification for him doing that. No societal justification for him acting that way. And there are what gets under my skin is that there are white people, white liberals out there who can't just say what he did was wrong, he had no right to do it, and leave it at that. They have to come in with the Robin DiAngelo white fragility bullshit of, oh, well, you have to understand he's been a victim of this, that, or the other systemic oppression. And again, that comes back to what's referred to as the soft bigotry of low expectations. That's what I didn't understand, is that if you are giving someone like Mel a pass on his behavior because he's black, you are being racist. And what you are doing is just as racist, is just as toxic, I should say, for society as consciously going the other direction and choosing to willfully mistreat black people. And it's a difficult sell to make. It's a difficult explanation to give, because it's not immediately readily apparent why it's so toxic. What the McMichaels did to Ahmaud Arbery is immediately obvious in how it's deleterious to the black community. So, this is not. For a lot of white liberals, they think this is just the cost of doing business, and you will absorb that level of shitty behavior. And so this was on my mind because recently I was watching recently I was watching a conversation unfold among some of my friends on Facebook, and obviously it starts to involve people I tried not to really get involved, but the discussion starts to involve, of course, people that I don't know on Facebook, and one of these guys comes in and says the Ahmaud Arbery issue has taught me one thing, it's that he's white. This guy says, if it's taught me that the problem is white people, and I regret my whiteness every day, blah, 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 I feel so bad about my whiteness and that I'm just by existing, contributing this. And then the next thing that comes in is a guy talking about, this quote, or get to that in a second, but first he's talking about, is a black guy talking about how the Ahmaud Arbery thing has taught him to never trust any white person, that all white people are fundamentally untrustworthy, and that, he starts going into his kind of black militant mental masturbation fantasy about overthrowing the country and white people and yada yada yada, all of that. Okay, what we are doing, what is happening, what has happened because of the white liberal approach to discussing race relations in the last decade or so, what has developed is this symbiotic relationship between white masochists and black sadists. And the idea, these wormy, servile, submissive little wormy people, the word worm keeps coming up and there's no better word for it, these wormy people that are like, I'm so sorry that I'm white. This bullshit, that attitude needs to be recognized as being just as toxic and just as destructive as the people who are going out there cheering white pride and all of that shit. Yes, it does. The the reason being that when you do that, when you set that as the standard, you incur the default, the human reaction, the default human reaction to that kind of sniveling, servile behavior, that kind of masochistic behavior, is to become sadistic. That's why that's why the term sadomasochism entered the public lexicon. It's a codependent, toxic codependent relationship, and I'm not talking about BDSM people that want to play around and have fun and whip each other. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the actual psychological state of a sadomasochistic relationship is a toxic relationship. It's a toxic codependent relationship where one person pathologically believes that they deserve to endure abuse, and so they interpret abuse from another person as being love, as being morally right, as being good, and they try to get that other person to incur that abuse. And the sadist is the person that willingly and knowingly feeds into that abuse, and that abusive cycle continues. All that is happening when white liberals jerk themselves off with these masochistic fantasies of "I'm so sorry that I whined." That I know I keep doing that, but it never I never get tired of doing that. And see, it just incurs that automatic sadistic response that the masochist engenders. It's a very knee-jerk kind of survival, almost survival mechanism thing of like, we're gonna, we have to punish the, like someone thinking they have to punish the weak part of the unit, the tribe or whatever, so that they don't, that weakness doesn't pathologically spread among the other members. It's a very just automatic response. And when you start getting into that, you are not helping black people, you are not improving the state of race relations, you are just giving the sadistic people, and I mean sadistic, pathologically sadistic, not in terms of how the word gets tossed around casually, but actually pathologically sadistic people, you're just feeding into their power fantasy. That's it. That's all you're doing. You are making malevolent, mean-spirited people get angrier. And when you hold that up as the gold standard for how people should interact with one another, if you think when you hold that up as the gold standard and you condemn and belittle other people for not falling into your whiny, servile, masochistic behavior, all you are doing is enabling toxicity. And you are introducing an extraordinary amount of pathological toxicity into the state of race relations. That is why, there is a reason why Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech is the cornerstone, the mission statement for race relations in this country, because it says that we are going to work towards a day where we can come together, we can respect one another as human beings. Now, that's not saying that we ignore the larger systemic issues that need to be addressed and be corrected. It's not saying that we pretend that these problems don't exist. What it's saying is that fundamental to moving forward as on race relations is going to be accepting a fundamental state of human equality between people. And I, living in Atlanta, and, obviously this incident happened in Georgia, and I'll be honest, for Atlanta, 100 or so years ago, was known as the city that's too busy to hate. It was seen, and being an international business hub, it became known, Atlanta became known for being extraordinarily diverse, for having an extraordinary number of people of different races and ethnicities coming in to do business, and the attitude was, we don't care about race, we're too busy making money, and commerce and a thriving economy is going to be our great unifier, and it is. When the economy does well and people are prospering, the level of racial hostility tends to go down, as has been the case in Atlanta. I have watched that, and believe me, that was before I grew up mainly in the Atlanta area. When I was 11, we moved to Mississippi for 5 years. And when we moved back to the Atlanta area, I say the Atlanta area because we lived in the suburbs around it, but when we moved back to the Atlanta area, I was so ready to get out of that racist, redneck, white bread, waspy, conservative, red state backwards bullshit like you couldn't believe it. And I was so sick of, white rednecks that could throw the N-word around in class and not get punished for it, and all of that. I was just so sick of that atmosphere that I was so ready to get back to Atlanta. And for a while, it was great. For a while, everybody was positive. The remainder of my high school years, everybody was positive. While I was in college, the atmosphere in Atlanta was positive. And then about 10 years ago, things started to, a little bit, just a little bit, a little more tension, a little more vitriol in the air. You don't really notice it, but now it's at a fever pitch, and it's I could go on at length about experiences I've had. I worry that doing that would only serve to help exacerbate the negative state of race relations, but it's gotten bad. It's gotten real bad, and people are in this town. It didn't used to be like this. People are ready to throw down and fight at a moment's notice. When I went to Boston, it was a real for college. It was a real culture shock, because up in Boston, people are mad, they're rude, they're mean. They were ready to throw down and fight at a moment's notice. Now I'm seeing that here. I'm seeing the tension. I'm feeling the tension, and to a certain extent, I'm very. This little cat, I tell you. To a certain extent, I am feeling the tension here in Atlanta. I mean, to a certain extent, I'm empathic, and I'm feeling the tension. And that is really starting to worry me, and we need to stop and think about this white masochism thing. I'm not telling anybody to go do the white pride thing. You do the white pride thing, you're a fucking idiot. I'm talking about returning to and reevaluating and comprehending why Martin Luther King is held in such high regard in this country, and why his I Have a Dream speech is like our mission statement for race relations. Because yes, there are all these systemic issues that have to be addressed, but we're never ever going to step forward on any of them until we accept that we have got to fundamentally treat each other. We've got to fundamentally treat each other as equally valid human beings, and not attach all of the baggage of race relations to every single interaction that we have. I don't mean to, I don't want to sound overly paranoid, but you can tell when you're talking to someone, white or black, who is or any other race, who is completely burdened with their every thought is completely burdened with ideas about white privilege and white guilt and all of this stuff, and when you can feel it when they're bringing that to the table. It's like it literally. I mean, it is almost telepathic. And again, I'm not trying to sound like some new age dipshit or anything, but it's almost telepathic. I mean, you can just feel it seething instantly, versus people who are totally chill and totally fine and all of that. And if you still need an explanation of why I would bring up something like this, stop and think for a minute about the fat, beady-eyed, paranoid, redneck, hayseed shitheads that hunted down Ahmaud Arbery and lynched him. Do you think those shithead hayseeds would actually care about things like, you're learning about your white privilege and the importance of understanding the systemic intersectional of the blah 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 with the blah 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 blah, all of this? No, they don't care about that crap. That stuff is nothing. That stuff is nothing except an opportunity for white liberals to jerk themselves off in an academic environment. It does not play into the actual nature of race relations. And the problem is, with all of the, there's this assumption when we go into we talk about the systemic oppression of blacks, people go into, blacks are statistically more likely to this, and this. Okay, this, and this all have structural underpinnings. There's reasons we got to that point. That if we want to undo those things, we need to understand what's actually going on there, and undo what's actually going on, rather than just using it as an opportunity to win an argument with a white person about why they should feel like shit about themselves. Okay, an example. The war on drugs. The war on drugs has disproportionately affected blacks. There's no question about that. So there is an observation that crack cocaine is prosecuted at a higher rate, or more severely and at a higher rate than powder cocaine, and blacks are more likely to use crack cocaine than powder cocaine, so this is a systemic problem that disproportionately affects blacks. Okay, wait a minute, and I'm using this as an example, by the way, so just hear me out. Okay, first of all, there are two different classifications of drugs. Look at how how crack cocaine is prosecuted in relation to crystal meth, which is a overwhelmingly white drug, or a drug popular among whites, I should say. Those two drugs are prosecuted at the same rate, the same level. Now, the problem, what happened with the war on drugs, is that the reason the mandatory minimums are so high in the war on drugs is because what they were trying to do is increase the penalties for possession, so that when low-level users and low-level dealers were arrested, they would cop a plea bargain and rat out their suppliers and rat out their dealers, so that the FBI and the upper echelons of law enforcement could go after the actual drug dealers, the actual kingpins, the actual cartels, and gather information that way. That's why it was set up like that. And that's why when you hear about these things, well, they do longer sentences just for blacks do longer sentences just for possession and that kind of thing. Well, actually, it's because usually it was possession with intent to distribute, and they copped a plea bargain, and it was knocked down to possession, that kind of thing. So what's the question here? What's the answer to this problem? End the war on drugs. Just end the war on drugs. That's it. And yeah, and a lot of people, that doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but that to me is the most obvious solution. People, you want to let people sit at home and shoot heroin? Yeah, shoot heroin, do ecstasy, do crystal meth, do every single drug you possibly pump, every single drug you could possibly want to pump into your system at your discretion. You do that. That's the libertarian in me talking. You do that. You have fun with it. Nobody is going to tell you what you can't put into your body. Now, obviously, if you steal a television or something to pay for your drug habit, then you deserve to go to jail for that. But yeah, every single drug on the planet, make it legal, end the fucking war on drugs, and you will also strike a severe blow to organized crime. You know, the reason we have organized crime is because in this country is because of the vice market, because of the government control on vice. That's why we have organized crime in the first place. So yeah, take that away, make it completely illegal. Completely illegal. Sorry, make all drugs completely legal, and your problem is gone. And also, I would also say release everybody that's in prison on a nonviolent drug offense. And so there's your answer. There's your problem. Now, the question is, do you as a white liberal who cares about race relations want to actually do something to help improve the situation of African Americans in this country, or do you want to have a stack of statistics to throw in people's faces to justify why you're jerking yourself off on Facebook and inviting angry blacks to come tell you what a piece of shit you are? That's the thing. That's the difference. That one example, I bring that up because I'm already in favor of ending the war on drugs. I'm already in favor of legalizing every single drug on the planet. And I know, because I understand the actual structural underpinning of the problem, I know that taking care of that will solve that aspect of the overall issue. Now, there's other issues that I'm not as well informed on and I can't speak to. Somebody brought up the issue of redlining, which is where black communities in particular are poor black communities, I should say, are disenfranchised because banks structure off where they, what districts they will and will not loan money to because of the relative poverty of the area, and that affects blacks disproportionately. I don't have an answer for how to solve that problem, except, however, I do have a moment of hesitation because I know that the housing crisis, the financial bubble in 2006, was caused by putting out home loans, sending out these subprime mortgages that the banks knew that people would never be able to pay back. That actually caused that problem. So there's kind of a back and forth problem there that I don't know how to resolve. I don't claim to have a solution for it. Here we go again. The keyboard is halfway off the table, and I'm afraid she keeps starting to step on it, and I'm afraid she's going to... Hey, sweetie. I'm afraid she's going to step on the keyboard and knock the thing over. Anyway, so I don't have a solution for that problem, but I feel like if we can step back from, oh yeah, well, black people, and actually, and that's me making fun, by the way, making fun of white liberals, if we can actually step away from the anger and the vitriol about how one group is fundamentally more affected by this than others, and actually try to figure out what's going on underneath it. Because what happens is the white liberal solution is, oh, well, white people are racist, so everything will be better if they stop being racist. It's like, no, actually, there are reasons that things get a certain way. And if we can figure out why things actually got that way, and actually solve that problem, then by extension, the people that are disproportionately being affected by it will improve by extension. Anyway, the tablet doesn't like to upload any videos longer than 40 minutes, so I'm going to wrap this up, but hopefully I've made some sense here. White masochism is not helping. You're just inviting, all you are doing is inviting malicious people on the other side to flagellate you for their own sick, personal, perverted pleasure. And please kindly have the decency to understand that no, I am not in any way, shape, or form suggesting that everybody on the black side of the spectrum feels this way. They certainly don't. I think we can all hopefully agree that there are toxic people. There are toxic people in every single demographic on the planet, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, and everything up and down, left, right, in between. Toxic people are toxic people. And all that the white liberal masochistic self-flagellating is doing is justifying and emboldening those people, which only serves to heighten the state of actual tension around race relations. Because, the people who are in the middle are starting to feel more vitriol coming from this side, and more revulsion coming from this side, and all it does is have the wider effect of pissing people off, making people angry, making people irritable, and working against the ultimate goal of racial harmony. Assuming racial harmony is what you actually want. It's what I want. Not this like weird changing of the guard where blacks get to flagellate whites now, and whites just rub their nipples in appreciation. Anyway, I'm sure this won't be controversial at all. Peace.